If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
Hey, we're back tonight. I'm John Wheaton, your host, founder of the Righteous Savages, and your host on Survival Dispatch, part-time here on Tuesdays and Sundays. Welcome, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime and resident intelligence extraordinaire, Mr. S2. How are you today, brother?
Doing just fine.
Good. Well, we've got a really... you probably saw the headline or the title of this episode. This is definitely a hot button issue when you start talking about racism, gun control, and all of that kind of stuff. But I think after we get through this first chapter, you guys are going to see that most of this is one of two things. Either it's race related or it's class related. Classic communism. So we're going to get into it, but before we get into it, if you guys are enjoying the content that you're getting on a daily basis here at Survival Dispatch, you can sign up for The Guardian, formerly Insider, and this is on patreon.com/Survival Dispatch or on Substack at survivaldispatch.news. I would highly actually, if you were signing up today, I would say sign up on the Substack, because Substack seems to be a little bit more less suppressive than some of the other platforms, and it's a really good platform. There's a lot of good content over there. We're over there as well in Righteous Savages, so a really awesome platform. But I digress. You can sign up. You'll get the daily SITREP, which goes out before the show. In my case, sometimes right before the show, as it was tonight. But it goes out. It has all of the information that we put together for you guys for these shows. And it also, the Guardian gets you access to our Signal chat, which is a private Signal chat for all of our paid Guardian members, where you guys can discuss intel, share stuff about you, or just talk to some people that are like-minded. It's a really awesome place to connect with people. You also get a weekly invite to the... What's that?
On that note, in the Signal chat yesterday, I posted my assessment of the power outage in Brazil, or was it Brazil? No, Spain and Portugal.
Yeah, Spain. Yeah. You were saying it might be a cyber attack or something like that, right?
Yes and no.
Yeah. So, but if you guys are interested in any of that kind of content, we don't post everything out in the public view, but we do post a lot more for our Insider Guardian membership. I said Insider. That was a Freudian slip. You also get the SDN Aftermath, which is at 11 Eastern on Saturday. That's a private webinar stream that Chris hosts, and he goes through survival tips and a lot of other things. He also will directly communicate with you guys. If you have questions, he's got answers, and that's on Saturday. And it's a really great time for you guys. And our mission here at Survival Dispatch is to dispatch information to fellow Americans and friends of America to empower the fellow Guardian and to help save our republic and Christian culture. All right, now we get into the crux of this episode, which is my understanding of all of my research is that all gun control is in some way dipped in racism or segregating and discriminating against lower class. They told us that gun control is for public safety, and they lied. From the $200 machine gun tax that bankrupted Depression-era sharecroppers to New York's $428 pistol permit that bankrupts the DoorDash driver today. Ronald Reagan smiling as he signs away your rights to any new machine gun. And the pattern is crystal clear. Disarm the poor, disarm the and disarm the uppity, and keep the ruling class safe behind armed guards. That is, unfortunately, and you guys heard me say a specific name in there, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan has been a champion of the right for a long time. And I think when you see some of his history on gun control, if you don't already know it, there's definitely some weaknesses that he had. So let's get something straight from the jump. Gun control in America didn't start with school shootings, mass media panic, and slick political ads. It started with men in power, terrified that people couldn't control freedmen, immigrants, and working poor. The laws weren't written to name in the name of safety. They were written to keep rifles out of the hands of, whether it be a sharecropper or just a poor farmer, revolvers off the hips of immigrants, and shotguns away from the unemployed. In 1934, the federal government passed the National Firearms Act. This is probably the largest single passage at the time that it was passed. It was the largest single passage of firearms regulation, firearms gun control. And it didn't ban machine guns outright. It just priced them basically out of anybody that was not wealthy. Tax stamp was $200. It is to this day $200. But do you want to take a guess as to what $200 looks like in today's money?
Probably looks around $4,000 in today's money.
You're pretty close there. This is adjusted for inflation. It would look just north of 4,000, just south of 5,000. So basically about $4,500. This was in 2023. So it's probably, with the inflation we've had the last 2 years, that may be close to $5,000 now. When you talk about $200 to get a suppressor, and that's what we're talking about, you get a suppressor, you get a short barrel rifle, get all of this other stuff. $200, that's not a lot of money. To somebody that's working paycheck to paycheck, that's a lot of money. But somebody that has a decent job, you can spare $200 on top of the $800 for the suppressor. What if it was $5,000? That changes the equation quite a bit. That's what they were facing in 1934. That's what the government actually thought. And that is directly aimed at people that couldn't afford it, in my opinion, the everyday person. You got anything to add on to, let's talk about the NFA for a few minutes here, and I'm going to give you a chance to talk through this.
Well, originally the NFA was said to have been targeted because of the gangster activity that was going on, and it was specifically targeted at machine guns, in particular the Thompson machine gun.
Yep, the
Because
gangster
it was,
machine gun.
yeah, because it was so easily, it had a very high capacity drum magazine on it that could be easily concealed under a trench coat. So that's what they originally said it was for. But as they started going through the list of things, it started looking like they were banning or basically taxing more innocuous things like suppressors that were added on later through the Gun Control Act, I believe it was. But of course, being that it went through the Gun Control Act, of course, it applied to the NFA because it was a tax stamp item. So
Correct.
all of these things, they tell you that it was for public safety, but guess what? It didn't stop the gangsters from getting machine guns.
It never has. And, that's the ironic thing is the people that are going to get these things, spoiler alert, gangsters typically have a lot of money because they're doing illegal things, especially when you're talking about the mob. They made so much money during Prohibition that, $4,000 was nothing to them, or the equivalent of $4,000 was nothing to them.
Well, what nobody was talking about back then either is that there was a lot of civil unrest going on at that time because of the Depression. And as you said earlier, it was designed really I want to say surreptitiously to keep firearms out of people's hands because people were going to be shooting people left and right in the street. And guess who engineered the depression? The bankers.
Yep.
So, and who is connected to the bankers? Our government politicians.
Correct. And
So we can see
go
all
ahead.
of all of this was engineered, and it was engineered because every 100 years or so the banking system has a reset, and they saw this coming and they were trying to protect themselves from that reset.
You will definitely see a pattern.
We're seeing the pattern right now.
Yeah, civil unrest, people upset with the way things are, the government basically crapping the bed and being like, oh, how do we keep people from actually doing what the Second Amendment says and standing up to tyranny? Oh, we better enact more gun control. Which brings us, well, let's finish up on the NFA. One of the other key parts of the NFA was they wanted to put a tax. They included handguns. Handguns was actually one of the main first targets of the NFA because it was the most concealable weapon at the time, still is. And it's they were afraid of assassinations and all this stuff against high-ranking people, government officials, all this kind of stuff. And so put this into play. But the revolt was so high against the handgun ban that they took it out at the last minute, and it wound up being basically focused on machine guns, short barrel shotguns, short barrel rifles. Short barrel rifles, that was specifically aimed at the Thompson submachine gun, as Stu said, because the standard Thompson had a 10-inch barrel. That's why it was 16 inches, because there weren't Thompsons at the time that were being manufactured with a 16-inch barrel. It was a 10-inch barrel. And so that's why they actually pushed this forward. And it had an effect that we're still feeling to this day, because I talked to a suppressor manufacturer at SHOT Show in January, and he told me the reality is if suppressors were pulled off of the NFA, they would drop so far in price that they would be the most commonly purchased accessory when you bought a new gun. He said a suppressor costs between $20 and $30 in material to make. The reason they're so inflated in pricing is a multitude of reasons. A company cannot operate on $20 and $30 sales that they have to wait 6 to 8 months to get in some cases. So there is a natural inflation of price. The what's the word? It's the exclusivity of suppressors, all of this kind of stuff. So there is a lasting effect that we're feeling to this day.
Not to mention all of the red tape they have to jump through just to manufacture
100%.
it.
Yep, 100%. And so,
gee, who'd have thought that protecting your hearing would be illegal?
in countries like Switzerland, which is a very gun-friendly country, they actually have national weeks of shooting where everybody goes to the gun range. Most people have military-grade weapons in their house. They have a civilian military that they can raise in a very quick time. There is a reason why everybody bypasses Switzerland. Mountainous territory with people that are a population that's regularly trained in firearms. Yeah, that's a nightmare for anybody. But excuse me, I am fighting off a cold, if you can probably hear it in my voice. So as I talk, I may end up coughing a little bit. I'll try and not cough in the mic. So we move forward to 1968. If you look back, 1968, that was a very tumultuous time with a lot of race relations in the United States. That was the year that the riots happened at the DNC, I think, in Chicago. There was a lot of unrest, and the Gun Control Act was sold as a, again, public safety protection for you guys, all of that kind of stuff. But there was one thing that politicians were obsessed with. Once again, it was like the beginning of the NFA. It was these cheap, what they called Saturday night specials. My dad actually bought a Saturday night special in the 60s. It's in my gun safe upstairs. It's a little 22 short pistol.
I've got one
with 7 rounds. Or no, 8 rounds, and still shoots. I shoot it every once in a while. It's a keepsake that I will never get rid of. But he bought it for $12 in 1967, I think it was, and it's been fired maybe 50 times since it was bought. It's not something that we would shoot on a regular basis every once in a while, but that was what they were after. And Dad actually called it like a Saturday night special. Cheap little pistols that were easy to buy, easy to carry, and overwhelmingly owned by Black and working class Americans. So this was the target. And it was targeted in large metropolitan areas. That's also something we'll get into in a little bit, is that most of the gun control affects these communities because they're Democrat controlled, and they essentially kind of want to keep these people under heel, largely. And I'm not like, we're not here to really like talk about overall race relations or anything. I'm just going to show you guys that really a lot of these laws that we deal with today actually came from these the fear of the populace, the fear of people actually revolting against government and wanting to keep lower class and different ethnicities from being able to buy guns easily.
class warfare.
It's class warfare. And as we've been talking over the last couple of weeks, and are going to continue to talk about communism, that is a classic trait of communism: divide on class. And in our case, the class is a little bit harder in the United States, so they do class and race, and because of the history.
Well, and because we have a middle class.
Yep. I'm going to put this up. Velcro, you're 100% correct. I don't know how Ronald Reagan became a champion. Let me say this. He was an amazing communicator, and he did, with the help of Margaret Thatcher, help end the communist rule in Russia. But he was not a conservative by any stretch of the imagination. You got anything on the?
It was a movie. It was a movie star.
He was a movie star that was a lifelong Democrat, and still held to a lot of the Democrat ideals, for sure. You got anything on the Gun Control Act you'd like to add?
No, I think we can move forward. We pretty much covered all those. Well, maybe we could talk about the big problems that they kept seeing was in California, where progressive dreams go to die. The Mulford Act, 1967. Reagan signed the bill to ban open carry. Now, why did they do that? It was because the Black Panthers had the audacity to walk into the state capitol with rifles locked and loaded and legal, and the political class panicked. And Reagan, he folded like a wet napkin. He signed it.
Yep. So this is exactly what S2 is talking about here. On May 2nd, 1967, while lawfully carrying their rifles, members of the Black Panther Party showed up at the California State Capitol in Sacramento to protest the Mulford Act, introduced by Assemblyman Ron Mulford, designed to disarm peaceable people. So this is like the reverse of open carry. I will say this as a firearms instructor and just a person that wants to always educate people on situational awareness. It's never really a good idea to carry a gun on your back in an open carry state. It draws too much attention, and in a lot of ways, it makes you the number one target if somebody wanted to pull something. I'm always more of a, can you do it? And do I think you should have the right to do it? Absolutely. As far as being smart or the smart way to do it, I don't think so.
I'll tell you a little story about something that happened here in my state. Open carry is absolutely legal here. And there was a man that was walking his dog beside the road. open carrying a 45 ACP, 1911, and two cops passed by him. They stopped, they backed up, they got out of the car, they took his gun, and they disassembled it, field stripped it on the spot, and threw the pieces in 10 different directions so that he didn't have his firearm anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I mean, they basically violated his constitutional rights. Right
Yep.
there,
100%. So
and there was no recourse for him.
Yep. So here's a quick video blast from the past. This is a property of the Center of Sacramento History. This was posted by Firearms Policy Coalition. About a 2-minute video, but this is what it kind of looked like in 1967.
Wait a minute. The people in this court and the people in the legislature have not been acting like human beings. They put trumped up charges of conspiracy and felonies on everyone who went in to exercise a constitutional right and said they had no right to bear arms in a public place. The California Penal Code section 12020 through 12027, and also the Second Amendment of the Constitution guarantees the citizen a right to bear arms on public property. And the legislature, I talked to Mulford last night, and he said the legislature has made certain rules that are superior to the United States Constitution and also superior to the statutory law of California, and that is that they made a rule that no one could walk on their property with a weapon. I'm saying this is a bold contradiction, and also Mulford is alive.
Well, I think it's a ridiculous way to try and solve the problems that have to be solved among people of goodwill, and there's certainly nothing that can be done in the line of goodwill when Americans have guns with even the implied idea that those guns might be directed against other Americans. But I would think that some of the bills that have been suggested, such as not carrying a loaded weapon on a city street or in town, this might certainly be a good one. There is absolutely no reason why out on the street today civilians should be carrying a loaded weapon.
I don't see how y'all can be no better than us.
You don't know the Constitution, right?
Sure we do. We're well aware of the Constitution.
You have no right to take my gun away from me. You break the Constitution like right. That's right. You break the law for me and arrest him. I would like to have my gun back.
All I can say is we need to teach the Constitution to our kids the way that those young black men knew the Constitution. 100%. So, yeah, this was one of those things where the fear of the prominent classes, because not a single act of violence happened during that whole thing. Not a single act. It's actually kind of like there was a day in Virginia just a couple of years ago where they have a I think it's forget what it's called. It's like a lobby day, I think is what they call it in Virginia. and the governor, which was Ralph Northam at the time, was trying to pass an assault weapons ban. And basically the entire gun community showed up at the state capitol because it is absolutely constitutional for them to do that in the state of Virginia. And 10,000 people showed up with guns. I mean,
I remember that.
Not to show violence, but to show, hey, we have a voice too. And to a certain extent, that is the intent of the Second Amendment. That's the intent of the Gadsden flag. Don't tread on me. Like, stay away. Come and take it. The other moniker that has been taken, and that is I'm sorry, guys. I'm having some issues with my voice, but that is the reality of the whole thing, is that we should be able to petition our government. And if that means showing up armed to show that, hey, we're gun owners and we are lawfully showing up with guns, there is nothing to be afraid of here. In fact, I would argue if you have a lot of law-abiding gun owners, that's probably the safest freaking place in the country at that time. Because you know what? they're not going to do anything unlawful, but if something unlawful starts to kick off, they're going to take care of it. I'm going to let you have the floor for a couple minutes. I'm going to clear my throat here.
A wise man once said, if the government's trying to take your guns, they're planning on doing something that would make you want to use them.
Yep.
And let me say this plain as day. Gun laws were Jim Crow by design and class warfare by effect.
Yep.
And if we don't learn our history, we'll keep repeating that history state by state, tax by tax, and permit by permit.
Mm-hmm. The National Firearms Act, $200 tax, $4,000, equivalent to $4,000+ today. The Gun Control Act, 1968, the fixation on Saturday night specials, code for cheap pistols. And so think about this. This is a great analogy. My father-in-law just bought a Security 9. It's like a $300 or $400 pistol by Ruger. Pretty decent little pistol. I've got a couple friends that have them. It's not my favorite, but yeah, it's a fine pistol. That's the equivalent of what they were talking about, these Saturday night specials. Like, because like $12 or $20 back then is basically like $300 or $400 now. So you can get a pretty decent gun for $300 or $400.
The equivalent of a high point. The equivalent of a high point.
Or a Security 9, or like a few years ago would have been an MMP Shield or something like that. You know, and actually you could probably include the lower level of Glock there, like $500. I mean, that's about what you're looking at. It's not quite a paycheck, and it's, you know, easily accessible and fairly cheap for the average person. I know a lot of people that work barely over minimum wage jobs that I have trained and got their concealed carry permit, and they have, you know, those $500-$600 Glocks. It's one of the most famous or popular guns to buy. So that's what they were going after, stuff that was easily accessible to everyday people. And it's insane. And then the outlawing of open carry because they were scared of a Black Panther protest. It's rather insane. And as I said earlier, let's talk about the man in the cowboy hat. Let's talk about him for a minute. Let's talk about Ronald Reagan. We're moving forward to probably the most egregious, and the way that it was passed is insane. It's utterly insane. This is the 1986 Firearms Owners Protection Act, or FOPA. This is when we finally lost all of our ability to own machine guns. See, prior to 86, you could purchase a machine gun. You had to obviously get a tax stamp on it. You had to obviously go through all of the rigors of the extra scrutiny by the FBI, but you could own a machine gun. And back then it was about $2,000 to get like an AR-15 or an M16. We'll say M16. And now, after the passing of the 86 ban, it outright banned any civilian-owned machine guns that were manufactured after May 19th of 1986. Those are still in circulation in private ownership. But that $2,000 M16 now costs $40,000 to buy. Well, that's clearly restricting it to only the wealthy. And I'll talk about the Hughes Amendment. So the Firearm Owners Protection Act was actually passed. The original intent of the bill, this is what's so ironic about this and why we have to be careful with legislation and we have to be aware of what's going on. It was actually supposed to fix the worst abuses of the ATF. And in some ways it did. The original, and I have that posted in the SITREP, so go over there in the SITREP. There is actually, I'm showing you it right now, the full bill laid out. And it did restrict the ATF practices. Well, a lot of the stuff that we want from the Trump administration, getting the ATF out of our business. They don't need that much control. But in the 11th hour, William Hughes slipped in a poison pill. For you guys that don't know what a poison pill is, a poison pill is intended to kill a bill. It's supposed to be such an egregious overstep that it makes the bill unpassable. So this was House Amendment 777, and it was passed by a voice vote, which effectively banned the purchase and ownership of anything, any fully automatic machine gun that was manufactured after May 19th. I have actually, in the SITREP, I'm not going to play it, but I've actually put the vote video. It's on YouTube. And you guys can go over there and watch. It's about an 11-minute video, but you can see, you can't actually tell who's saying yay or nay. It was completely and totally crazy. So they co-opted the fact that he had put in a poison pill, and they quickly did a voice vote. And a amendment of that magnitude, there is no way you pass that on a voice vote. Like, you cannot put that level of an amendment into a bill and then not actually do a recorded vote instead of a voice vote.
And the reason they did it that way is because they didn't want the people to know who the cowards were that voted that way without putting their name on writing.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. 100%. So that is the and here's the worst part of this is Reagan actually knew what had happened. He could have vetoed it, but he decided not to, because there's videos of him saying, I don't think anybody should be able to own an AK-47 or AR-15 or any of that kind of stuff at this time period of time. He went on to support the Brady Bill, the 1994 assault weapons ban that expired after 10 years, thankfully. So it's very interesting that we herald this guy as a bastion of the right when it's not just guns. I mean, he had amnesty that allowed the first batch of illegal aliens to become citizens here, and several other things that wouldn't actually put him in a class. And I don't think Ronald Reagan was a bad guy, but I think he was naive to a certain extent on like what he said. I don't think people of goodwill. Well, I mean, we know that bad people do bad things all of the time, and were back in the 1980s and are doing it now. But the result, and this is actually, so I kind of misquoted a little bit earlier, but the M16 cost around $800 in 1985. You could buy a brand new off the assembly line M16 for $800. And thanks to artificial scarcity, you're looking $25,000 to $40,000. I've actually looked up some of these online, and you can find them, but they are extremely hard to find and they're extremely expensive. S2, I'm going to give you a chance to talk a little bit here about this stuff.
It's unconstitutional. How's that?
100%.
Reagan talked a good game, but at the end of the day, he, like you said, he was always a Democrat in some way, shape, or form. And whenever the Democrats needed somebody to run cover for them, they would call on him. The other thing that he did was that he later supported the Brady Bill and then praised the assault weapons ban of 94, even though there was no such thing as an assault weapon. And,
Right.
Meanwhile, in states like New Jersey today, working class Americans are still being denied carry permits 5 times more often if they're black and 3 times more often if they live in poor neighborhoods or zip codes. because they do look at that stuff.
Mhm.
So nobody can tell me that any of this is about safety. It's always been about power. This is going ever since man decided they were going to carry weapons. It's always been like this. I mean, and in different countries too. If you look at Japan, citizens weren't allowed to carry swords in Japan. Only the
Yep.
samurai were allowed to
Yep.
carry swords. It's been that way in medieval England. Only knights could carry swords.
Mhm.
The citizens weren't allowed to carry those types of weapons, so they were basically denigrated to carrying pitchforks and sticks.
Hey,
Which is-
at least England is going right back to that time. They're trying to ban knives now. So I mean, we're come full circle for medieval times.
Yeah,
Just right
well,
back into
next thing you know, somebody's going to get hit in the head with a cast iron skillet. They're going to try to ban cast iron too. So,
Yep, absolutely. And so we move into kind of what's going on, and there's a mixed bag of what's going on now. As you have states like my own, and I'm going to use Illinois because I'm very intimately aware of what it takes to get a concealed carry permit. Illinois, which was forced by a Supreme Court thanks to a little old lady at a church in Anna, Illinois, about 30 minutes south of me, where actually my father grew up. And she was working at a church, and thanks, Pete. I wish I had some salt water, so I will do that afterwards. I am sorry I'm losing my voice, so we'll see how long I can go. So Illinois passed the Illinois Rifle Association sued the state because this little old lady was working at a church on a Monday morning, and a thug that was like 6'6", 250 pounds, came in looking for money. And she said, there's no money. It's gone. There's no money here in the church. And so he beat her and another woman. I mean, if you can see the pictures of her, she just absolutely mauled. And so she was an avid shooter. I mean, she was such a gun nut that she had a dog named Glock and a cat named Smith & Wesson. Not even joking. This lady was like avid shooter at the gun range every weekend. She can't shoot anymore because she's in her late 80s, very much, but she still comments on our Facebook posts at Tombstone Gun Range. We were honored to actually give her concealed carry permit when the range first opened in 2013. But Illinois was forced by the Illinois Supreme Court to pass a concealed carry. So what did they do? They didn't just say, do these classes and you can have a concealed carry. They found curriculum and passed about as good as you could get for Illinois for a concealed carry permit, but it's $150 state fee. Plus, you have to do a mandatory 16-hour class, which is not provided for free from the state. This is, Tombstone Gun Range, part of our income is that we get concealed carry people that are wanting to get a concealed carry. But I mean, it's $250 to $400 depending on where in the state you go. We're on the low end of that, but it's still $250 for the training, $150 for the state fee, and you have to renew it every 5 years.
Not Plus, to mention, if you have to take that class during the week, you're losing your hourly income from work.
Absolutely. And so you can see, let's say you've never owned a gun. You get into a situation where you need to get a gun to protect yourself. Domestic stuff happens all the time. Maybe you picked the wrong guy to date. And I'm coming at this perspective of a woman because that's probably the most important perspective, because women are not as strong as men and they need a way to defend themselves. So say you have that. Say you're a woman who's you dated a dirtbag and now he's coming after you. And you want to get a gun. So this is what you have to do in Illinois. You've never owned a gun. You don't have a FOID card. So that's another thing that you have to get in Illinois. It takes 3 months. They have to give it to you within 3 months. That's $11, not expensive, but you have to get a background check. Then you have to get your FOID card before you can ever buy a gun. Then you buy the gun. You have to wait 3 or 4 days for that. Then you take the class. You send off your application, and your concealed carry can take up to 3 months. You're talking 6 months to get a concealed carry permit. And you may not even have a parking ticket, but that's what everybody has to do. So this is insane. And then we get to Cook County. Cook County has done insane things like a they attempted things like a $25 tax for every firearm that you own on a yearly basis, 5 cents per bullet. Illinois Supreme Court said, and they don't do very much pro-gun stuff, but they said, that's a little bit too much. And it was struck down in 2021. This is just the surface. We're not even getting into Topeka and all the stuff that's been passed in the last 3 years. And I'm kind of blown away because Illinois, if you guys don't know, is actually a pretty big bastion of firearms manufacturing. Springfield's here. There's multiple. Optics Planet is in Illinois. Xander's is in Illinois. There's a lot of firearm manufacturers. Rock River Arms is in Illinois. There's a ton of firearms manufacturing because really historically up until about 2023, it was for a blue state, it was fairly good on guns. But anyways, that's kind of where, what you're looking at to try and get a concealed carry permit in some of these restrictive states. We'll get to the positives, but let's continue on. And S2, go ahead and talk through California and Massachusetts.
Well, California, they love regulations. In LA County, for instance, getting a concealed carry permit means hundreds and hundreds of dollars in fees. I can't even keep up with it the way they're trying to do all of this stuff. And then up to 24 hours of training, and in some cases, you have to get a psychological evaluation just to carry a gun. And if I recall, in some cities, they were also asking people to divulge their social media presence too. Maybe that was New York.
You're right.
But that's all detailed in the Cal Matters breakdown. In Massachusetts, it's $100 just to apply, not to mention the mandatory safety course. In Maryland, same game. And don't even try New Jersey, where they proposed a mandatory $300,000 liability insurance just to carry, and that's not self-defense. That's extortion. And when you look at how these state legislatures are all woven into the different industries, you can see where there's a very huge amount of grift going on there, where it's okay, I'm going to pass this gun law, and which one of my buddies has something that's going to benefit from it.
Yep.
And it all goes back to who has the money, who's in power, and it's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Right. Yep. So in looking at that, and in some cases, so California I was listening to Washington Gun Law. By the way, if you guys don't follow Washington Gun Law, one of the best dudes out there, and Will Kirk's an amazing dude. I actually know him personally. He is a amazing dude and does a lot of really good information on gun law and case law for the Second Amendment. He actually was talking about the new California proposed law that they're trying to pass that would actually make the fees upwards of $2,000 to get a concealed carry permit in California.
There was something else that just came up in California too. Damn, I can't remember what it was. It just came up in the last few days. Jared from Guns and Gadgets was talking about it. Some kind of new law that would make you a criminal if you did something. I can't remember what it was right off the top of my head, but they're full steam ahead out there for some reason.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll show you guys this real quick. This is a sheet from Massachusetts, as he was just talking about the fees. License to sell, rent, or lease firearms, $100. That's state fee. That's not even on top of the FFL charge. Firearms identification card is $100, and license to sell ammunition is $100. So license to carry firearms $100. So it's just fee after fee after fee after fee. in Massachusetts, and this is across the board in these blue states. And it's all rooted. So you look at where these policies are coming from. In Illinois, where are the policies coming from? Springfield via Chicago, because they're not concerned with us downstate. They're not
here
concerned.
it is.
What's that?
What California is looking to do is they're aiming to ban Glock pistols. They're basically aiming to ban any firearm that can be readily modified into a fully automatic pistol via switch that is already illegal. As categorized by the ATF.
Yeah, and what they say is it's just easier to do that with Glock. Well, I guarantee somebody with a 3D printer can figure this out. Spoiler alert: people can figure out how to make an AR-15 full auto with a 3D printer.
It's just a matter of defeating the disconnector.
Well, yeah, exactly. And this is not. It's just like so Illinois. The ramifications of the PICA Act, which is the assault weapons ban. So any pistol over 15 rounds, you cannot possess magazines over 15 rounds. You can't possess semi-automatic firearms, rifles like the AR-15 and AK-47 or AR-10, whatever. Take your pick. Pistol caliber carbines, all of that stuff is banned. And what they told you is if you registered, so it's a forced registry, if you registered your guns, you could keep them. Thankfully, 99% of people did not register their guns. So it kind of makes the law like kind of dead on arrival. But
if I recall with that too, law enforcement came out and said they were not going to enforce
Correct.
it.
So out of 103 counties in Illinois, 98 sheriffs said they were not enforcing this. And it's really interesting because what they're doing is this backdoor way of over time getting rid of guns as well. So they also outlawed parts. Now, if you get if you grandfather your gun in and register it, you still can't buy parts. And now, thank goodness, there are some companies that are like, yeah, we don't care. These are not regulated. That's why this Frames and Receiver Act at the Supreme Court is so important, is because if they pass that and say that can be upheld, then they can start regulating those other parts of the guns. And so over time in blue states, they're going to actually just continue to whittle down over generations to basically render this completely and totally null and void to own guns in Illinois. And what do you think they're going to do with the next mass shooting? Because it's going to happen in Chicago at some point. They're going to say, well, we tried the registration. Now all you guys that registered your guns, you got to turn them in now. Because obviously us being soft on this didn't help. So, and this is, I didn't have time to actually go through the details on like Republicans and Democrats, because don't fool yourself. There are Republicans that want to take your guns just as much as Democrats. It just seems like the Democrats want to do it more.
Looking at you, John Cornyn and Tom Tillis.
Honestly, I'm looking at the NRA. The NRA on the bump stocks. They compromise.
Completely silenced.
So and I'm an NRA instructor because that's a requirement to become an Illinois concealed carry instructor, and I don't like the NRA. I think that they've compromised too many times. They're a far cry from what they were back when Charlton Heston was at the head of the NRA. Cold dead fingers. And ironically, story about Charlton Heston, he was anti-gun until a gun saved him from a very, very serious situation. And then he became the head of the NRA. This is Dave Kemp's your experiences drive your beliefs. You experience a life or death situation where you're like, I really wish I had a gun right now. You become pro-gun pretty quick, in all honesty. But if you have parties swapping jerseys, but the poor stay disarmed, nothing changes. The founders wrote the Second Amendment for farmers with muskets. let's make sure that the forklift driver with a Glock can still afford his today. What the government has done with power is it cannot be understated, and it needs to be addressed. We've seen the power of things like the ATF going into Waco to serve a search warrant when they could have picked up David Koresh out at Walmart. Just to have a show of force so the ATF could justify its budget. It's part of the budget.
Well,
That really happened, guys.
Let's look at the director at the airport in Arkansas, who the ATF raided his house at night for suspecting that he was dealing guns.
Yep.
And at 3 o'clock in the morning, they raided his house, came in, and he thought somebody was breaking in. He took a shot at the guy that was at the front of the line, and then they killed him.
Yeah, and I think they actually supposedly the guy supposedly had grenades or something like that too. And it's just like and like yeah, I know it was, but it's the same thing. It's the same lies that we're told about the Branch Davidians. Now, I think that David Koresh was an absolute psycho. I absolutely.
There's some speculation that there was some child molesting going on there at that ranch too.
Yeah.
And the whole reason that they went in there, because the FBI was in on it and they knew what was going on there. They were probably part of the trafficking piece of it there. They came in there, they dumped OC gas in there, set the place on fire, burned it to the ground, and then the next day had bulldozers come in and clean up the evidence.
Yeah. Nothing suspicious here, guys. Oh, if you want to screw something up real good, just give it to the government. They'll screw it up for you. But what can we take away from this? I think that, we have to continually understand history. And that's why I spend so much. And we're going to be spending a lot of time on history, specifically with what we've been talking about. And I promise it's coming, guys. The talk on communism, the series on communism, because if we do not learn history, eventually someone's going to try and erase it. And if they erase it, then future generations aren't going to know the truth. That's what Mao did in China, is he erased history, he erased culture. And we can't allow these politicians who don't have our best interest in mind, for the most part. And we cannot allow them to control everything that has to do with our lives. We have to stand up for our rights, and we have to stay in the fight. And honestly, I'm a big proponent of Gun Owners of America. I think that they are a no compromise organization overall. I know a lot of guys that work there. In fact, I'm probably going to be on their podcast soon, and we're going to have a couple of the guys from there on our podcast, Righteous Savages podcast, to talk about this a little bit more in depth. And I'm a big supporter of them, Firearms Policy Coalition. So if you want to show support and keep in the fight, we are winning a lot of battles. I will say that. There are 29 states with constitutional carry now.
Well, and there's also something else going on. There's also something else going on at the DOJ too. The DOJ is backing out of all of their gun control cases that are in court right now.
And the other thing that just happened, I think today or yesterday, they released the first initial list of nonviolent felons that are being given their gun rights back. That's a huge thing, because I don't think that if you like, one case that they specifically talked about was this kid. He was like 17, 18 years old and stole some copper pipe out of a construction zone at 17. Lost his gun rights for his entire life. When I was 17, I made some stupid mistakes too. That's not indicative of who the person is when they become an adult and when they learn. So I don't think just shutting the door on felons. Now, violent felons, that's a completely different thing. But when you talk about just your, somebody who, oh crap, I nonviolent felon and I've done my time. I think give them their rights back.
Yeah, when they say you paid your debt to society, that should not mean that you lose your rights for the rest of your life.
Correct. And that's basically what it has turned into. So, anyways, that's the end of chapter 1. We're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsor for this segment, and that's Performance Triggers. We'll be right back with chapter 2. All right. That's performancetriggers.com. Check them out. They have just about everything you would want for any of your firearms. Use code SD10 when you check out for 10% off. And also, I'm going to give a shout out. We have a Righteous Savages. We have a discount code with Shield Arms. They're very famous for making some higher capacity Glock magazines for the single stack Glocks. And their new generation works flawlessly. I had an issue with one of their Gen 1s, but their Gen 3s are incredible. Those guys are awesome. And we're getting ready to do some testing on one of their new 6mm ARC AR platforms at the range. And I can't wait to get my hands on that. But if you go over there and you use the code SAVAGES, you will get 5% off and free shipping. So check them out, shieldarms.com. They have a lot of stuff over there. Anyways,
by the way, I love their magazines, by the way.
Yes, they're incredible. You can basically get a Glock 43 or a Glock 43X with 15 rounds instead of 10, which is a huge deal. I'm a capacity guy. So we're going to get into some more of the news with chapter 2, as we usually do. And we're going to start off with this from Jack Posobiec on the Canadian election. It says, boomers' number one issue in Canada election was dealing with Trump. Their lowest issue was helping make housing more affordable and making Canada a better place. It's like leading horses to water, and they you can't make them drink. These people are insane.
Trump derangement syndrome.
Yep, 100%. And here we go. This is a key. Why is Canada shifting? Well, look at this. Over the past 4 years, would-be Biden granted legal citizenship to 40 million immigrants that's calling the U.S. election. Look at this. Migration. That's insane. Let's watch this real quick, because this is supposed to be, I think this is kind of like the equivalent of a poll watcher. What we would do here in the United States known as a poll watcher. Watch this, 56 seconds. This is interesting.
It's really fishy with what's going on with this election here in Canada. I was supposed to be working for Elections Canada tonight in Durham region, which is just east of Toronto. And so what my job was is when the votes are done at each polling station, they get brought to the office. I was there to make sure all the packages were sealed, all the documentation was in order, so then the votes can be tabulated and counted. Not a single vote in Durham region had been counted yet. None of them had been brought to the office yet. Then I go on my phone and I see CTV declaring the Liberals the winners. It's like, how is this even possible? Here we have, one of the biggest areas just east of the GTA, Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa, Uxbridge. Not a single vote counted. And then, CTV says the Liberals win. And then CBC follows in that. This reeks. How is this even possible? Something's fishy. Something's not right. There's got to be some sort of investigation into this, because I think is really fishy with what's going on with this election here in Canada.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it, S2?
Yeah, and they use paper ballots.
Well, the next slide
They use the media for election and interference the same way they did in 2020 here.
Yep. Let's watch this real quick. 2-minute video. Caught poll workers bringing boxes of unsealed ballots home.
Box of votes.
More boxes of votes. Just in their car, willy-nilly.
Stuff today and tomorrow, and then set up on Monday.
So even at the early voting places, they send the boxes home with folks?
I'm not sure about the early voting. I didn't work that.
No way. So they send everybody home with a box?
For the early ones?
For what? You got a box.
Yeah. It's empty.
There's no plain empty votes in it?
Oh, is that?
Why would they send you home with it?
Because you have to bring it Monday morning.
Back to the building that you took it from?
No, to your polling place, wherever you're voting.
So the polling place, let's say in Dundas, does that change on Monday?
Bring it there, yeah, and then at the end of the night, you count the ballots, and then the supervisor takes it to the head office.
Interesting. Find it strange that why would they not just leave them in the building?
Good question. It would be a lot easier.
So where does this go?
Wherever you vote, wherever the zone is. Like Thomas More has a poll. St. Andrew's Church has a poll. And there's a couple others too around here.
Don't you find that a bit odd?
That's the way it is. That's what it's always been done. I worked the last election too. It was the same.
Last election with Trudeau.
You guys ever heard of a term called chain of custody? The chain of custody is the most important thing for understanding where a ballot's been. This was the problem with all the mail-in ballots that were sent in with no signature and no post stamp on the mail, on the envelope when it was mailed in. This is all a part of chain of custody. This is all how we determine that this actually came from the address it was supposed to. This is the stuff that if you're going to do mail-in votes, you have to have perfect chain of custody measures. You have to be able to do that stuff. And I think that that's probably one of the craziest, and I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on this. This video literally popped up and I threw it in this SITREP because I was like, that's crazy if that's the case, because you realize how many nefarious people could like mess with that stuff.
Somebody could have come up to him at gunpoint and robbed him of all of those ballots.
Right.
And you've just disenfranchised everybody.
It is crazy. So unfortunately, I think our neighbor to the north has fallen unless there's a major change. But I'm not hopeful for Canada.
I'm almost going to guarantee this. You will start seeing more and more and more videos like this one coming out over the next few weeks.
Agreed.
And when that happens, we've already learned that the Canadian truckers were not afraid of protesting. They will go back and do it again.
Yep. 100%.
And this time they're going to have the people on. They're going to have the people on their side.
Yep. They won't care about the horns in the middle of the night at that point. Okay, so this is shifting gears. John Bolton came out of his spider hole to talk about Pete Hexath at Secretary of Defense. So let's watch this.
Do you believe Hexath should still be on the job?
No, I think he should resign for his own safety's sake, if nothing else. This is a critical time for the American military. We understand the Trump administration will rightly propose enormous budget increases for defense. We need it. We need a secretary who can get the job done, not somebody who spends his time on Signal chat groups.
And just as someone who is a national security expert, the fact that it was happening on his personal cell phone, how much does that concern you, knowing that foreign adversaries often target top-level national security officials to get into their phones and put in spyware?
Yeah, I almost never used my personal phone when I was national security advisor. I mean, the breaches of security at risk in this conduct are enormous, and I think that's one reason why he shouldn't be in the job.
Do you believe Hexath should still?
That guy is such a dick.
He really is. And what's really ironic about all this stuff is we actually don't know everything about those communications necessarily. So it's
and neither does he. Neither does he.
And this is the whole thing. The media grabbed the baton and they're running with it, thinking that they've got something big. And the reality is like they don't really have much of anything, if we're honest.
The reality of it is they have to keep the war machine moving because that's where all of the money goes. That's how all of these politicians make their money. If you keep, we every time we've been in wars, you just watch when politicians' incomes rise, it's because we've gone to a war. They want Tom Cotton in there. Tom Cotton is pro-war.
Yep, neocons. Yep, 100%. John McCain was a neocon. Lindsey Graham, when John McCain was alive, was a neocon.
Oh, well, here's a little tidbit for you. Did you know that Lindsey Graham's staffer sent an invitation to Hunter Biden to do some fundraising for him?
South Carolina, what you doing?
Yeah.
What you doing? Red state, what you doing? This is the problem. This is the problem, and I'm going to get into a little bit of another subject here, but this is the problem with red states that are consistently red, is they're totally fine with having these rhinos. We live right next to Indiana. Indiana is a red state. The southern half of Illinois, the southern 3/4 of Illinois is way redder than Indiana. Indiana is really a rhino state. My sister lives there. And Indiana is a hotbed for big pharma. And Indianapolis, there's Eli Lilly's there. There's several others. And what they are is they're beholden to big pharma. And big pharma makes a lot of calls in their elections. And that's why they get these rhinos that go in. I mean, Mike Pence was from Indiana, and Mike Pence was a rhino. I mean, Mike Pence
is a traitor.
And he hid behind his Christian moral virtue. And he was no more virtuous than my German shepherd. So anyways, anyways, moving on. This is what Sharia law looks like. This is so shocking, but also not shocking. Pakistani teen girl was publicly raped as a punishment handed down by a Sharia council to atone for her brother's crimes. What in the world?
Well, you want to hear something else about that? So, if a woman gets divorced from a man under Sharia law, but if they separate and she wants to come back to her husband, she is forced to have sex with a strange man in front of her husband.
So it's like cucking for Islam?
Yeah.
Woo. That's weird. But this is not what justice is. Justice is not punishing someone else's for the crimes of another. But and having a young girl raped for that for a crime that her brother did, that's what they're trying to bring to the United States, to the UK, and I'm going to prove it to you. Here you go. Here it is right now.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. Bye-bye. Sharia for UK.
Sharia for UK. They're not hiding it, guys. They're not hiding it at all. It's insane.
And yet we still can't designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization here in the United States.
Right. And here's more evidence of the insanity. And this is the EU, and this is the lie of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is the lie that you can bring all of these different cultures together and they can actually coincide with each other. This is the big facade that getting into foreign wars to try and export democracy and our way of governance is such a false premise, because you cannot do that with a people that are so steeped in the lie of Islam. You can't do that. And that's also the lie of multiculturalism. You can't bring a bunch of people from different pasts and not have them actually assimilate to the place that they're coming and it actually work out. And that is what is going on, because what happens is exactly what happened to this church in Wales. Let's see this here. It was burned down by Islam. I will say there's been a lot of churches burned throughout Europe over the last 3 or 4 years. The big cathedral.
Well, and that's the war on Christianity going on there.
Mm-hmm. The war that nobody wants to actually confirm or give credence to. It's sad because that's probably, 100, 200-year-old building. So
that's called Build Back Better, dude.
Right. I tend to think that Valentina Gomez is a little cringy, but this was a ballsy move. This woman, she's got a death wish, but man, she's got some big old brass balls.
Islam is the religion of rape, incest, and pedophilia, where they bow down to a stupid rock and a false prophet. I will never mention theological
Get out of here. Go back in your cage.
Go back to your mother.
Go back somewhere else. Hey, go back somewhere else.
Try something. We're rolling.
That's a ballsy move for her. Much respect. But like what she's saying, there are 57 Muslim nations. Why are you coming to a Christian nation? We do not align ideologically. In fact, spoiler alert, your religion tells you to kill us if we do not convert. So
rape children.
And rape children. Your prophet married a 6-year-old, but he didn't consummate the marriage till she was 9, so that's okay. Yeah. Sick. Absolutely sick. So
that's why we're not compatible, because our Bible says millstones for everybody that harms a child.
100%. And I will tie the millstone around these creeps' necks. Anybody that harms a child. Here we go. Believe them when they tell you what they intend to do. Britain is just another land to be conquered. Our culture, traditions, and heritage is to be erased and replaced with blasphemy laws and erasure of women's rights. And Sharia is coming. So let's watch this. 51 seconds. I want to make a point about something, because we're going to get into this over the next couple of weeks. There is a key where Islam and communism mingle in a big, big way. Culture, tradition, and heritage is to be erased. When we get to Mao and what he did in China, you will see exactly how these two ideologies meet up in that point. Erase history, erase culture, and erase traditions. Let's watch this.
We will only truly get real power if we just have more Pakistanis sitting in council chambers and parliaments, but actually having more Pakistanis and South Asians sitting in the corridors of power making the decisions. And that's where I'll end tonight, is to say the change is coming. And the days where our South Asian community are viewed as a vote bank or a curry bank are well and truly gone. The days where South Asian communities get to lead political parties and get to lead countries is now upon us. The days when South Asian communities get to decide not just which school our children go to, but what they are taught in those schools is also coming.
Then we just won't go to your school.
Well, that's the problem in England, is that now most of the public schools are required to teach Islam. Remember that whole, I mean, Britain's big on laughing at us on separation of church and state, which we covered in a previous episode, that it's not a real thing in this country. But, you know, they want separation of church and state. And listen to the words that he said. I know it's a little bit hard to hear. That's why they have subtitles on it. He wants more Pakistanis, more Muslims in the halls of power making the decisions. That's where they are so good. They use the avenues and the weapons that is available to them, much like communists. They use what is available to them to get a control of power, and then they wield that power against everyone in the country. And they wipe out. Guys, in the 3rd century, the Middle East was 97% Christian. When you look at Egypt, it was 98% Christian. And this next clip actually is a guy that I would encourage all of you to look up, Andrew Cedra. He is from Egypt, and he talks about the history. He was a Christian living in Egypt, and they had to pay taxes for being Christians. They had to do all of these jumping through hoops, and they eventually immigrated to the United States. And he is a preacher here. But this is him with Charlie Kirk talking about how they will destroy America. Watch.
It didn't switch over. It's not playing.
And they will impose Islam, and we see that in Australia and in London.
Islam will be spread by two ways: through the importation of Muslims into your country, or the spread of lower income, predominantly minority men. Would you agree with that? And
the left love Islam, and they will import Islam, and we see that in Australia and in London. One of the major people in the Department of Education in London, he's literally an imam and a mufti. He's literally an Islamic scholar and an imam who preaches. You will see Islam make its way into the left-wing politics. That's one of the reasons the borders were open the last 4 years. It was intentional about changing the character of this nation fundamentally. The way to destroy America will be Islam. And this is very obvious in UK. Half of Americans are left, half of Americans are right, give or take. The only way for leftism to win permanently is to import a group of people that fundamentally hates the American freedom. That happens to be Islam.
Mic drop.
Yep, 100%. And this is a man that has experienced it himself. So we have to stay on. I mean, we have to be the vanguard. We have to be the sentinel calling this stuff out when no one else will. But I appreciate people like Charlie Kirk who are talking about this, and I'm seeing a lot of this infiltration of some of these narratives into some of the people on the far right, and it's kind of making me a little nervous in a lot of ways. But we have to stay engaged on this stuff. This is probably the biggest threat that is not being talked about enough. because it's not politically correct to talk about an entire ideology that's in this country. And here's what I would say. A lot of people want to twist this narrative or flip it on and say, oh, well, I know Muslims that are peaceful. No, you know Muslims that aren't practicing Islam correctly. Sorry, that's the fact. Islam is very clear. The Quran is very clear on what you're supposed to do to further the cause of Islam.
Well,
and if
they're also allowed to lie.
Yes, they're allowed to lie to infidels. So yes, this is this is a dangerous thing for our country, because as that guy laid out, the left knows it can't win on its own ideology, so it has to import a adjacent ideology, and it's using Islam as a vehicle for this.
And they generally target poor communities too.
Mhm.
Generally, the just say it, the black community is the one they usually target because they seem to be the easiest to convert.
Mm-hmm. All right. In other news, hundreds of lawyers quit DOJ Civil Rights Division as Dylan cleans house. This is amazing news, and
This
I added
was glorious.
Yeah. This is because the key here is the Civil Rights Division. That's the ones that's pushing all the woke crap, all of that stuff. This is amazing. And please, more of this, and replace them with good people.
Well, there is a ramification to this as well. You know, we keep hearing everybody say, "Oh, we want to see war arrests, and we want to see them now," and blah blah blah. Well, here's the problem. This is the rub. They don't have enough attorneys to work on these cases, so it's going to slow things down unless they can find enough attorneys, good clean attorneys, to replace them. So
yes,
if you want to see action now, this is why that's not happening.
Correct. And this is the thing that people don't understand, unless I have a couple friends that are lawyers. The time that it takes to build a case, even if you have all the evidence, is astronomical. Most of these high-level cases take a team of lawyers, not just one lawyer. And they don't have the manpower of people that they can trust. And here's another thing. If you swing at one of these and you miss, that person gets off when they shouldn't have been prosecuted. You get off on a technicality. Happens all the time. So you have to have every I dotted, every T crossed before you even step foot in a high-level federal court, especially when some elite has their life or reputation or freedom on the line. You have anything to add, S2? That was it for chapter 2. So,
no, that was pretty much all I had to add to this last part.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to chapter 3. And this is where we kind of have a little bit of fun, a little bit of
dude, I saw this video.
This is hilarious. I always love to start with cat or dog videos just because I think cats and dogs are hilarious. I've never been a cat person, and my sister they live out in the middle of nowhere, and so they got themselves a cat that was a mouser, and that cat found another cat, and when that happens, you get a litter of kittens, and she has like 6 cats now, and she'll send me videos. They are the funniest animals. Just hilarious, but this is funny.
To put the finishing touches on this match. Oh my God! He's slowed down. It's on the nose.
Ali roll. Oh, driver.
Rollins stop the Lesnar. Roman Reigns. Oh, RKO by Orton.
Holds it again.
And a RKO.
Suplex.
On the outside, top right top pin.
Got him in a sleeper hold.
Where the hell is... Oh, there it is! Unbelievable resurrection for the Undertaker.
Doing. I can see one flaw in Carlito's.
RKO! Oh my! Oh! Oh! Oh my God!
The last one was the best. It's so funny. So funny. In other news, they did decide on a pope because Katy Perry declared that she herself as the pope after reading the Bible for 11 minutes.
I think if she ever picked up a Bible, she'd probably turn into a pile of ashes.
She grew up in church. That's what's crazy. She grew up I think she was a pastor's daughter, if I remember correctly. Completely and totally warped now. Here we go. Liberals in 2025. This is some sound logic, guys.
You guys prefer free college or free abortions?
Abortion.
Free abortions?
Yeah. In what age do you think most trans kids determine that they're trans?
Violet told us when she was 1.5. She's been telling us since she could speak.
I hear a lot of, we're not going back. What are we not going back to? The kitchen.
What is your biggest fear in 2025?
People not understanding the difference between lies and truth.
What is a woman?
Does it really matter?
So could I be a woman if I wanted to be?
Yes.
Okay, quickly. So I misunderstand. Are we saying that 2 + 2, if you say it's 4, that's racist? I mean, that sounds like we may be mischaracterizing it. What, if you can quickly sum it up?
No, that's not mischaracterizing it at all. Math is basically racist under this ideology because it says there is no such thing as an objective reality. So 4 might not be the right number. 2 + 2 might actually.
Oh, my head hurts every time I watch these kind of videos.
I have no words.
And next, this is a good one. Sometimes it be like that. This is called a married man couch.
Hey, babe, can you please take the trash out? Babe, put away the dishes need to be put away. Your clothes need to be folded.
Oh,
that was stupid.
But it seems that way sometimes. This is actually a really good speech. I put this in kind of as an inspirational thing. It's not like necessarily anything funny, but man, is this a good speech.
Have you ever seen that video?
No.
Pull that video up because it's one of my favorite.
There will come opportunities in life, you know, when they're presented to you in front of you. It's just a matter of whether you're not prepared to take advantage of the opportunity. But you got to develop that resilience within you. Life is not about how much you succeed. It's about what happens when you fail, right? So life is, you could look at like, man, what's been inspiring for me? If you said, oh, Tom, what are the greatest wins? I'd be like, the wins. Those are, yeah. You know, let's talk about the losses. Those are the ones that really, you know, made me who I am. And you know, as you go through life, and we're all adults, things happen in life that you don't want to have happen. Whether you lose a game or whether things don't go well at work or something with your child, or, you know, there's a lot of things that come up in our personal and professional lives that just don't go the way we want. And how do you deal with it? You deal with class and integrity and with courage and with resilience, and you're able to share emotion with people. And do you have other people in your life that can help you through those things? And I think, like I said, my blessing is I've had people that go through those things with me. And, you know, they always say double the pleasure and divide the pain. And that's what relationships are all about. When you care for those people and when you love them and when you give to them, they give back. And, you know, that's where the reward comes.
Have you ever seen that?
Very inspirational. Resiliency is how you get through. Meanwhile,
it's not what you do when you get knocked down. It's whether you can get back up and keep moving forward.
There you go. There you go. This is awesome. This is the director, Peter Berg. He's done a lot of really big movies. Lone Survivor, Friday Night Lights. Really famous director, but same on Joe Rogan talking about the Apache helicopter when he was doing one of his military movies. Pretty insane.
Have you ever seen an Apache helicopter up close? Incredible looking pieces of equipment. And they've got a helmet with a mask, and they call it slaving the ship to the goggles. They activate the goggles so that wherever they turn, the helicopter turns. They've got eye sensors, so where their eyes go, the guns go, right? So you look at it, you kill it. And they're flying them all around the set. I'm like, I've seen the pyramids. I've seen the Notre Dame Cathedral in France and a lot of Van Goghs. They're beautiful. I saw the Mona Lisa. That was great. Seeing this fucking helicopter turning as the guy's head turns with the weapon systems. I'm like, who's building cooler shit than this? Like,
it is one of the most amazing things in the air. There's a reason why we haven't been able to find a replacement for it. The Comanche was supposed to be, and the Comanche kind of fell apart. But
we've got stuff like that in FPV drone world where we have the tracking goggles.
Yeah,
I don't have that set up yet, but it could be on the horizon.
Very cool. I know DJI has a couple of those like headsets where you can look around and it'll move and stuff. It's pretty insane. Here we go. Debunking some of the stuff about dangerous jobs.
Anything men can do, we can do better. Reject delusions, embrace gender differences.
Correct. Now,
where's my sandwich?
Last statement's great. I don't think anybody understands those guys that work on those. Well, like Deadliest Catch was a great kind of look into that world, but those oil rigs and stuff, they pay those guys $1,000 a day for a reason. It's one of the most dangerous jobs. I mean, you saw the dude come up out of the water, look like a big, strong dude, and he's just kind of like that's some crazy stuff in some of the craziest waters. You know, those guys that work the Bering Straits that bring your, seafood to your table for dinner. Man, those guys work some dangerous jobs and should be respected. So here we go. This is John. No, it's not
Brain
John.
fart.
No, it's
Brain fart.
the famous guy that the famous tennis player that has a reputation for his temper.
Oh yeah, John Mac or something or other.
Not McAvoy. McElroy, I think is what it is. McEnroe. That's right. Thank you. We both.
That's been a day. That's been a day or two.
Yeah. So this is him talking about Serena Williams, and very interesting.
Would you like to apologize?
No. She's the greatest player, the female player that ever lived. Then the lady said to me, I don't remember which one, but she said, why did you say woman? Why didn't you just say the greatest, tennis player that ever lived?
For me, tennis and men's tennis and women's tennis are completely almost two separate sports. So I'm like, if I were to play Andy Murray, I would lose 6-0, 6-0 in 5 to 6 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, because it's true. It's a completely different sport. The men are a lot faster, and they serve harder, they hit harder. It's just a different game, and I love to play women's tennis. And I only want to play girls because I don't want to be embarrassed.
Would you like to?
Even she knows that.
Yeah.
But the leftist purple hair wants to continue to say that, we can do anything a man can do. We don't need men. Okay.
Yeah, good. Stand on the side of that net and take a tennis ball in the teeth.
Right. And that's not discounting her ability or her accolades. She's an amazing athlete, one of the best female athletes of all time. But still a female. And yeah. All right. Here we go. These guys have a plan on how to rob a bank. So let's watch this. I love me some good Key and Peele, man. That's funny. I've seen that a million times, and it's still freaking hilarious. Oh, all right. Well, that's the end of the episode tonight. Real quick before we wrap up, don't forget, if you guys like our content, you want to support us, you want to show that what we're doing matters to you, go over to Patreon or Substack and sign up for Guardians. $9.99 a month, $95 a year, which saves you about 2.5 months of the monthly cost. You get access to the SDN Aftermath on Saturdays, which is the private webinar with the Guardians. Not the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Guardians of the Chris Heaven, the Guardians of the Heaven. Ooh, there we go. A daily SITREP, which you get for the show, and you can have it on screen and go through the stuff that we're going through. Access to exclusive behind the scenes content, access to our private encrypted signal chat, which is, as Stu said, some important things drop in there from time to time from our Intel group, which is really, really awesome. You get the 228-page Essentials Guide for free. You also get our eMag collection for free, and that's a big deal. A lot of work and time and great information are in those magazines, and then early access to some of our content. So if you're interested in any of that, go over to patreon.com/survival dispatch, or on Substack, it's survivaldispatch.news. So as a wrap up, so we've walked through a lot of the lies, the loopholes, and the laws layered after layer of control disguised as concern. Don't trust politicians. From the black codes of the 1865, and I didn't go all the way back to there. There's a lot of information, and during Reconstruction and stuff, I would encourage anybody to go back and look at that kind of stuff. But all the way from 1865 to 1968, the Gun Control Act, and then Reagan's Hughes Amendment and the 86 ban, to New York having to pay $428 just to be able to defend yourself. It's a big deal. It's all built on the same lie, and it's not about safety. It's about control. It's about limiting everyday people from being able to control their lives and their freedom. They used to say say it to your face. If you were black, you couldn't, or if you were an immigrant, or if you were poor, you couldn't have these things. And now they hide behind paperwork, taxes, good character clauses, mandatory insurance. That's one that we didn't really cover very much, but the $300,000 mandatory insurance that was struck down by the courts in New Jersey. That's just insane. But the Second Amendment was written. It wasn't written just for gated communities with trust funds. It was written for the farmer, the factory worker, the forklift driver, and the widow living on the edge of town. And that's who gets hit hardest today. The single mom who's working two jobs to take care of her kids because her deadbeat husband left her, and she doesn't have enough money to move out of the inner city in Chicago, but there's drive-by shootings every day. That woman should have the right to protect herself, and it shouldn't be hidden behind a $600 fee. It should be our right, and you shouldn't be able to put a price on that. But they're trying to price people out through these layers of laws and regulations: the poor, the black, the rural, and the ones who can't afford lawyers, permits, and 16-hour classes. They call this gun safety, but it is a strategic disarmament. Let me tell you what kind of bans, what kind of society bans the rights to protect yourself, unless you're rich or politically connected. A two-tiered republic, a banana republic, or a country on the verge of authoritarianism. A nation where the elites stay armed and the peasants stay vulnerable. But not anymore. not on our watch, because we are not defending a right. We're defending equality under God, under law, and a system that tries to sell you liberty, but to you with a price tag. There is only one answer. We don't need permission to be free. So you guys out there, stay armed, stay informed, and stay righteous, because that's the key to our freedom. S2, you got anything to add?
No, you always say everything. I got nothing left.
Excuse me. Well, let's move on to the conflicted question. This is a little bit of a long one. I'll let you do the honors.
All righty. Before I do that, everybody, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done it already. Okay, there you go. Thanks, Doherty one. Conflicted question. It's late summer, 6 months after a cascading financial crash that has left grocery shelves bare and fuel tightly rationed. You, your spouse, and 2 children, ages 9 and 14, have been traveling with several other families from your church to bring medical supplies and portable water filters to an outlying ministry clinic you've supported for years. While refueling at a nearby abandoned highway rest stop 40 miles from the nearest town, 3 armed men roll up in a beat-up pickup truck. Their driver leans out and snarls that the interstate ahead is blocked by rioters and that they need your diesel, fuel, food totes, and first aid crates for people on the front line. When one of your companions cites the clinic's urgent needs, the men laugh it off and rack a slide on a shotgun. You have a concealed carry pistol and a carbine locked in a quick access rack in your SUV. 2 other dads in the convoy are likewise armed, but the aggressors currently have the drop on your group. Your 9-year-old is wide-eyed, clutching the hand of the church youth leader, and several elderly volunteers are beginning to panic. The gang spokesman gives you 10 seconds to hand over your supplies, or they'll start taking volunteers instead. Here's the question. Do you attempt verbal de-escalation and risk losing life-saving supplies meant for the clinic, or even emboldening the attackers? Do you initiate an armed response, knowing violence may erupt around the frightened children and seniors? Or do you offer a measured compromise, partial fuel cans, some fuel, hoping to preserve life without entirely surrendering the mission? Okay.
Yeah. So in the comments, you heard the 3 choices. So if you wanted to verbal de-escalation, put 1 in the comments. If you wanted to enter an armed response, put a 2. And if you wanted to do a measured compromise, do a 3. I'm probably, because of the children, not going to do the armed response unless I see that it's just inevitable that it's going to happen. So I would probably offer, verbal de-escalation. So here would be my tiers. I'm going to say all 3 are options. So I would try a verbal de-escalation, then I would do a measured compromise, and then I would, if there was no compromise reached and they were just intent on violence, then I would do armed response.
So I have a saying that I like to repeat a lot that says the chance favors the prepared mind. The question I have is, what in the hell are you doing outside your vehicle without a firearm in that situation?
Yep.
Why is there not somebody out there? If you're carrying valuable supplies, why is there not a 2-man team outside the vehicle with you while you're
on
refueling?
a perimeter? Yep.
Yes. So if all those conditions had been met, and they would have been had it been me, I'd say, buddy, you want to turn around and look at that AR-15 that's pointed at your head and ask him, do you want to be the first one?
Yep. Turn your head into a douche canoe.
Yeah.
So.
That would be my attempt at verbal de-escalation.
Yep. So I'm going to actually just block this guy because he's putting some racist stuff in the comments. Yep.
Yeah,
anyway.
he had something else that he put up earlier.
Yep.
And
sayonara. We don't have any room for that here. We are all God's children. And if you think otherwise, you find another podcast. Anyways, thank you guys. Once again, I am so thankful for this opportunity to join you guys a couple times a week. And even though my voice is just literally trying to stop on me, I appreciate you guys listening to me through all the hacking and coughing. And we're going to close it in a quick prayer, and then we'll sign off. Heavenly Father, thank you that you've given us wisdom, knowledge, and reason, and the ability to think critically about situations and to look beyond the wall that people want us to look at. We'll look beyond the face of things, Lord. And I pray that you would give us more wisdom and knowledge on these things that we may not fully understand. I ask that you would help us to understand that that we have the right to protect ourselves. That is a right that you gave us. And I pray that people take that seriously. I pray that people understand that the world is dangerous, that sin and sinful nature is a real thing. And there are people that are outside of the grace that you give that are willing to do acts of evil, Lord. So I pray that you inspire us to train, to learn, and to understand that our responsibility is protecting ourselves, but also protecting our loved ones. So give us that desire, that knowledge. Help us to be safe. I pray for our country as we go through this transitionary period, Lord, and I pray that you would turn it for the good and for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Guys, we'll be back tomorrow with another episode brought to you by the one and only Chris Heaven. Until then, Jesus is King, and God bless America.
Hoorah.
Right now, we are in the midst of a supernatural war. This is a war between light and darkness. It's a war between good and evil. It's a war between Christ and Antichrist, with demonic forces, highly organized, totally ruthless, committed to destroying you. Satan to rob you of your joy. In his presence is the fullness of joy. In nothing be not terrified by your adversary. In nothing be not terrified by your adversary. The Bible says you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. The truth is not something. The truth is someone. That someone is Jesus Christ. And when you know him, you have the truth, and you walk in the truth, and you joy in the truth, and you rejoice with truth that is unspeakable and unshakable, because Christ is the solid rock, the cornerstone, precious and elect in Zion. He's not trying to be truth. He is the truth. I want to put on the whole armor of God and come out fighting with fresh fire, that I can be counted worthy to be numbered among the New Testament saints.